The Warriors are going to the NBA Final. I've seen enough. I think they're going to the NBA Final. I think this team has been underrated all year, but especially after this Jimmy Butler trade, there is no doubt in my mind that this team is coming out of the West. We have had a large enough sample size to see that they are pretty dominant with Jimmy Butler, which is not a surprise to me because I think people were forgetting how good Jimmy is just because of all the drama that was happening with Miami. I said it way back in September. I made a video on it and I was saying if they get Jimmy Butler and the package is right, like it wasn't anything crazy, they are championship contenders. And then when this started to speculate later in the year, my only hesitancy was giving up Wiggins just because Wiggins was having such a terrific year. So shout out to Andrew Wiggins. He dropped like 42 the other night. So he is still having a very good year, especially a bounce back year based on, how he's playing the years prior. So that was the only thing that I said I was a bit hesitant on just because of how good of a season Wiggins was having. But nonetheless, I was like, if they get Jimmy, this team, like the way they're built, and especially with the fact that they got to keep Kuminga and Moody and Pajemski and everybody else, this team is set for the finals. And here's the thing. They were, I think, like a top 8 defensive team even before Jimmy got there because Jerry Stackhouse has been doing great things for them on defense. But since Jimmy's been there, I believe they're total second in the league in defense. Now, if you go look at the stats, I believe they're still like 6th or something just because of how they, were playing defense before he got there. But in the Jimmy era, they are second in the entire league. Not only that, but one of the areas that they have struggled with, not just this year, but for quite a while, is getting to the free throw line. They are not a free throw heavy team, and I don't remember if they were dead last this year, but they were close to dead last, and they have been close or dead last in that category for a few years. So one of the best things about bringing Jimmy Butler over is they get a guy who not only we know what he does in the playoff Jimmy, he can get his own shot, he can create shots for others, great defender, but he gets to the line consistently, a lot. It stops the clock. It gets you literally free shots. And this is something that the Warriors have not had. And since he's been there, I believe they are now like 4th in the league in attempts. 4th, from like 28th to 4th. That is how much Jimmy Butler affects them from the free throw line. It's not just Jimmy. Draymond Green is having a Defensive Player of the Year season, and I think he might win the award. It was a couple of months ago or maybe a month ago. I think it was after Victor, unfortunately was ruled out for the rest of the season. Hope he heals up soon. But he was the leading candidate at that point to win the award. And so after that, I believe this is when I was talking about it, I looked at the, other candidates and it was like Evan Mobley, which makes sense, and, stuff like that. But I said, I don't understand how Draymond is not on the list. Maybe some other, predictions did have him on a top 10 list, but the one that I looked at did not have him. And I said in that video, I don't understand how Draymond is not on that list. He is having a crazy defensive season. Well, now as the season has gone on, especially after they got Jimmy, and we have seen more and more and more Draymond crazy defense, I think he's going to win the award. But Steph Curry, the greatest shooter ever, he was even having some struggles, earlier on in the season. Ever since Jimmy's got there, he has been insane. And part of the reason is because Jimmy just takes so much pressure off Steph in so many different ways. And so now Steph has a lot more freedom. And so you see the stats he's putting up. Like, he dropped 52 the other day. And he came back tonight and dropped 37 on the Lakers and they won. Like, Steph Curry is able to do so many more things freely and have more energy because Jimmy draws a lot of attention. Let's shout out to Moses Moody. I've been talking about him for a while. Since Moses Moody has been starting, they have been basically unbeatable. Moses Moody has had an incredible season. Shout out to Moses Moody. I just am so happy for him that he is in the starting lineup and getting the playing time that he deserves. The other thing about the Warriors is they have so much depth and they are second in the league in points per game off the bench, thanks in large part to Kuminga. Like, Kuminga is a starter on other teams. He's coming off the bench for them. He dropped in a cool 18 points tonight after he was out the other game from an injury. And I believe they're only technically like 1 point behind Memphis's bench. I think it's like 45-44. So they could easily be leading the league in bench points. So they just have threats from everywhere on the floor. You got shooting, You got plenty of defense. Shout out to Brandon Pajemski, had a crazy game tonight. Every single position, Looney, he always comes in and does great things. And they have the it factor. This is one of the most important things. They have experience and the it factor. If you don't think that Draymond, Steph Curry, and Jimmy Butler, even though he has not won a ring yet, they know how to get it done in the playoffs. So when you have a team with that kind of experience and the way that they are so good offensively and defensively, I don't think that they are going to lose a playoff series. That doesn't mean they're going to sweep everybody. They could lose games, but I don't see anybody in the West beating this team 4 out of 7 times because there's just, I just don't see it. And if you want to go, well, how did they play against them in the regular season? Even though regular season matters, but playoff basketball is different. We know that regular season matchups, you can't necessarily say that team is going to win because they won the regular season. But let me help you out since I'm sure you're wondering. They beat OKC, who is regarded as the best team in the West, and a lot of people have them coming out of the West. They beat them twice out of the 3 times that they played this season. And guess what? Both of those times, they did not have Jimmy Butler yet. If you don't know, they have basically owned the Rockets for a while. The Rockets actually did get the last matchup against them. But before that, they had won like 15 straight. They won the last game. Somehow they're playing the Rockets again in a couple days. Unless I read this wrong, they already played 4 times this season. I don't understand how they're playing a 5th time, but the Warriors have won 3 out of the 4 times. The Warriors just beat the Lakers tonight with Luka. So, you know, a question about could they beat the Lakers with Luka? Well, they did. Again, I'm not putting all my stock into a regular season win, whether they lost it or they won it. I'm just saying, because people are going to ask, they did beat them. They beat the Grizzlies the other day. We know this. The only team that is above them in the standings that they have not beaten this season is the Denver Nuggets. And when you got Nikola Jokic, I mean, you're likely to have a really great chance to win. I mean, he dropped 61 the other night, you know? I know it was double overtime, but like, he's an insane player. So like, no, they did not win against Denver this season, but again, that doesn't necessarily mean that they can't beat them in the playoffs. But I am not betting against this team. I am betting on this team to go to the NBA Finals. With 7 games left or 6 games left or whatever it is at this point, it's time to start formulating opinions on who I think is going to, you know, make some noise in the playoffs, who's going to get knocked out early. And this is my first prediction. The Warriors will go to the NBA Finals, and I think they might win it. I think Steph Curry and Draymond are getting ring number 5. But let me just stick with, you know, them making the finals right now because I haven't thought about who's coming out of the East or anything like that yet. Warriors will go to the NBA Finals. That is my official prediction.